regulations. And come up
Okay,
to our board.
go ahead.
In case they have questions. And there are
these,
definitions
huh?
for both of those.
Say here.
Oh, I'm sorry, we started roll call? I apologize, I was distracted by the new technology. Here.
Here.
County adopted, state certified.
Here.
Here. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone, please be seated.
What we did in 2006.
Next item would be a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll move it.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Motion passed. Next motion would be to, oh, okay,
Same regulation.
thank you.
New toys.
Next item is a motion to acknowledge the minutes of April 8th, 2019.
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passed.
May I say something?
Yes, sure may.
Can we take a moment of silence for the tragedy that happened Easter, to the families that lost beloved people in their loss, please?
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is to open the public portion of the meeting for purpose of discussing, for raising points. It's not a discussion for anybody in the public to raise any comments with respect to the resolution items on the agenda. So I have a motion to open.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. So now, if anybody has any comments that they'd like to make with respect to any of the resolution items, please come up to the podium here and state your name and your residence in the town.
Seeing none, I'll make a motion to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. Now we'll move into the discussion section for this evening, and the first item was supposed to be Jessica. I know she is. I saw her. Hey, okay, let's move on. We'll come back. Frederick, for the board members, I wanted to try to have, a number of folks bring us updates on where we are, including Frederick, and I did give you that
Yeah, thank you.
copy for the bond. Frederick, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Frederick.
Thank you, Frederick.
Frederick, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to present an update on the financial condition of the town at the end of the year 2018. The last time I presented was January 11th, and since then there's been some updates or changes. Most notably, we've received some of the bills that were not received by then, and we have included those bills in our ledger. So looking at the updated condition, which is much more reflective of really where we ended up at, let me start with the revenues for the General Fund A. Towards the end of last year, we received about 1.7 million. Essentially, it was a loan or a borrowing, which the board approved was to be used to reimburse General Fund, having spent its own money for the building across. When I put that into the books, and looking at now the total revenues to date, we are in excess of what was budgeted by about 34%. So essentially, the actual revenues are in excess of the budgeted by about 1.4 million. Given that we reimbursed 1.7. Looking at real property revenue,
And I would just add for everybody's knowledge, that was a reimbursement of 1.7 out of, I think, a total of 2.4 million. Is that correct? You know,
that is, the 2.4 is what was spent.
spent, right.
At that
Right.
time, yeah. The rental of real property, we are almost at 100%. We have received 195,000 of the budgeted 197. During the course of the year, we did not budget for the payments in lieu of taxes, but we did receive 43,000.
That's Adams, or what is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
Adams, yeah. The state aid revenue sharing from New York State, we received at 100%, although there have been stories that this may be going away.
So that's the AIM money.
Yes,
So 266.9, which apparently was restored.
Right.
We hope, I mean, remember, the state operates on a different fiscal year than the town, so.
right.
Yep.
In the new budget, which is due, I think, March 30th or something like that, or was due,
Yeah, April 1st is usually when
April
it's due.
1st.
Yeah.
I would imagine that they reinstated the AIM money for the next fiscal year.
Right.
They're
But
supposed to, yeah.
now, does that have anything to do with the cap assessor revenue that we get from the state, or is that separate?
No, this is separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where do we show the revenue for the cap assessor? Do we show that on the budget also?
The cap assessor revenue, really, we don't have a line for that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't want to,
I don't think we're getting any cap assessor money from the state anymore.
okay, so I don't want to go too far down a tangent here, but and I'll send you an email, something we're going to need to take a look at, and Joe, we went through this years ago. We're going to have to evaluate if we're still receiving any incentive from the state to continue the cap assessor program, because I believe that expiration on that cap agreement should be approaching. Yeah, so just sideline, I'm going to take a note, I'll send you an email. When we get into budget in September, we're going to need to make some corporate decisions to see where we're going with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good point.
Looking at the mortgage tax revenue, this is an area that the general fund really did well. We budgeted for 450,000 and got 634,000, excess of 40% over and above. Looking at the Part Town B fund, the revenue received year to date also improved, and we have an excess of 687,000. This was mainly because of sales growth
Right.
tax that we received in March for 2018, 492,000. But beside that, the Verizon franchise fee came over budget by 21,000. The building permits was over by about 120,000, 167% of what was budgeted for. Looking at the highway fund, we received 3.8 million, which was 5% over what was budgeted for. Chips came in at 278,000, and also last year we received funding from FEMA from the storm that happened in 2017, March 14, 15. So we received 97,000 from FEMA and 16,000 from the New York State.
Now, it should be noted that the March 2017 storm was a presidential declaration. That's why we were able to get FEMA money on that. Unfortunately, the macro burst in
Right,
May
it
of
wasn't.
2018 was not. And we lobbied from a town perspective, from a county
Yep,
perspective,
sure
from a
did.
state perspective. But if you don't hit the thresholds then you can't get that reimbursement opportunity. Again, I just want to give a shout out to Frederick
I
on that
agree.
March of 2017. Not every town applied, nor was successful, and it was a surprise to me, because personally, I didn't think we were going to get any money out of it, but we got a check for $16,000, which was obviously unanticipated revenue, so I guess you got to be in it to win it.
That's right.
So thank you, Frederick.
Yeah,
Really,
thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
Now, turning to the expenditure side of business, the A fund, after incorporating all or most of the expenses, I would say 98%, we are only at 95% of what was budgeted for. Original budget was for 4.2 million, but during the course of the year, we did some amendments to the budget by appropriating fund balance, and the modified budget was 4.6, having increased the budget by 469,000. But still, this is under what was budgeted for, which is a really positive thing. We went a little bit over looking at the attorney fees and engineer fees. No, engineer we came under. We budgeted 105 and we spent 86,000. Now we have to remember that most of these expenses were allocated to the capital side of expenses because we had a lot of projects going on.
Did, question, with respect to the attorney's fees, did that include the monies that the board approved for payment of litigation-related attorney's fees?
Yes.
Because that was, I think, 65, or
Yes.
45,000, I
Right,
believe.
yeah.
So that number included that amount?
Yes, so
Okay.
that's why it's
Okay,
slightly more.
thank you.
Yep. Looking at the health insurance
So,
expense.
Jim, you're a little bit off the hook, but not much.
This year, we've been pretty good on not
Well, I think we've been trying to manage those, including the engineering fees, but we do have a lot more projects, but they're looking more closely at it. As Jim knows, look at the line items.
Well, we have a judgment and claims line that we like to budget
Right.
and then have zero expenses,
Exactly.
and that's all I'll say.
Sorry to interrupt, Frederick.
So looking at the health insurance expense, under the A fund, we budgeted for 515,000.
I'm sorry, just go back to the recycle center
Yes.
again, just, because we got on the side discussion here. So would you just review that again?
Yes, the recycle center cost was budgeted for 152,000, and we spent 171,000, which is over budget by 12%.
And what is that additional 12% attributable to? Is it like overtime, or is it additional fees that we're getting charged? Because we've had some discussion, and
I
just
don't
curious.
think it's just contractual, basically.
Okay.
So it's-
abated
if it's on the
solid waste.
400 line, then it's getting rid of the refuse.
Yeah,
Right.
So that's,
Yeah.
we talked about this informally offline, and I don't know if we've ever taken this approach before, but would it be advantageous for us to RFP the hauling?
We could try it.
I just don't
mean-
know how many options there are.
I mean, right now, Royal is on a state bid.
Okay, all right, that was what,
And
that's what
my
came up
understanding is that we are actually getting charged less than
last.
the
Less than state bid, right.
less than the state bid amount was my
Okay.
recollection.
All right, so maybe at some future meeting when we don't have a heavy agenda, we
Right.
can brainstorm a little bit on that.
Sure, okay.
You know, based on the discussion that, Frederick supplied, did a good job and, put in some of the costs, and it seemed like the highest cost, from what I saw, was getting rid of furniture and wood were the two highest
That's correct.
costs. So,
Yeah,
Used to be electronics and plastic now.
yeah, so, I mean, but we can have that discussion another
At
time.
a later
but-
time.
well, I think, we have that, and also bulk pickup, leaf pickup, the whole waste disposal issue, I think.
Yeah, we
can discuss.
definitely have to brainstorm again, because
Yeah.
there are expectations out there in the public.
I agree.
And it's difficult to continue to explain how much more expensive it is to get rid of things.
Right.
People are almost willing to pay more to
Yeah.
get rid of their things.
I
So,
agree.
thank you.
So looking at the overall B fund expenditure, that also was under budget. We spent 82% or 1.7 million out of the original budget of 1.5. Highway expenditure came in at 91% or 3.6 out of an original budget of 3.66. We spent 3.69. So fund balances are unassigned or unallocated. Comparing to what I reported earlier on in January 11th, there's been an increase from a total of 6.4 million to 7.7. A fund 2.3 million, B fund 4.1, and DB 1.2 million. Parkland Trust remains at 611,000. So, and then if you look at the other side, we had appropriated about $500,000 towards the 2019 budget. And so far we have utilized about 1.3 million between January and December 2018 in using the fund balance to do some projects here and there. So basically, I think that we are in good shape for 2018. 2019, of course, there's going to be challenges. I know we are doing a number of projects. We're going to have to, if it's a general fund project, use the general fund balance to start some of those projects, and if possible, borrow to the extent that we can.
I think that's why we wanted to have this overview, so we can look at it, and also you had produced the summary, very good summary of, the bond, funding, and what our obligations are. So I think as we go forward, then it's my intention, I think, with the board's agreement, that we'll look at this more closely. But I would like to say that Frederick's done an excellent job, and I think with the resources that we've also recently provided to him with respect to a new account clerk and the software package, which will be, what's your expectation now for Edmonds? I know there was some delay, but that will help.
They indicated to us that August we should go live.
Okay.
It might take a little bit longer for the utility for some reason, because they say that we have to have the financial first in place before we bring in the utility.
And you'll
But we have
recall
a-
too, I think with, Councilman Beal's help as well, that we still relatively were conservative with respect to our budget planning for this year. It would be great if this trend continues, but I think we're, well positioned to do some things, with both, some of the fund balance and also some of the debt, coverage. But we'll have to look at each item closely.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate the debt service analysis you provided earlier today via email. And yeah, I think we're doing this right. We're looking at the whole picture, not just part of it. We understand that we are carrying some fund balance, but I think it's safe to say that, and I've made this argument with the Comptroller's office, we have to carry a certain level of fund balance in order to protect ourselves and our residents with this tax cap, which is fluid, right? And if we want to entertain any capital projects that are not exempt from the tax cap, because none of them are, we have to have cash on hand.
That's right.
And I think we're, as of the first, end of the first quarter, I think we're in a good place. And I just wanted to correct one thing I said earlier about that FEMA money. We got a check for $16,000 from the state, but we got a check for $97,000 from the feds. So that was unanticipated revenue from 2017 that ended up in the 2018 budget. I believe I think FEMA money goes into the A fund, right? Or did it go in? Yeah, it did. So when people look at the fund balance and ask, why do we have cash on hand when many other municipalities don't, it's because we have a methodology here in this town that I think is different than most municipalities.
Okay. Frederick, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Jessica, would you come up, please?
forgive me for my tardiness. When you're 50 feet away and you keep checking your watch, you swear you have just another minute to finish your discussion that you're having. So before I start on Community Day, I wanted to mention the Easter egg hunt that just passed. We had a record number in attendance. We had 480 children that partook in the trackable part of the event, which was our raffles. But you also usually have about 25 to 30 kids who don't take part in that. You know, they're little. So we had approximately 500 kids at this event, which is a all-time high for us. And we had a lot of great volunteers, and we couldn't have asked for better weather, and it was just a great day. So I just wanted to let you all know that that went well. Councilman Kuzmins was there. He did our announcing for us.
I watched
So-
the Councilman Cosmas show on
Yes.
YouTube
He has a
from
future
Charleston.
broadcast.
So you surprised me. You surprised me
I was
because
disappointed, though, he wasn't the Easter Bunny. I mean,
there's always next year.
I could have played both roles, you know, Clark Kent and Superman. Sometimes you can't be in the same place.
You had to choose.
I was really surprised.
Gotta
Great
choose.
job.
Well, thank, and I
I
want
didn't
to,
doubt you, but great job.
yeah, well, thank you. And I also want to thank the camera work. I mean, I think a great thing that we did was to retain the services of that company because they did a really great job filming that event.
And
they
for the
certainly
record,
did help.
you did a great job, but I was away for the last 11 days at my in-laws, so I watched a lot of YouTube videos of the town of Wappinger. And one of them I watched was Supervisor Thurston's entire presentation. It went on for like 30 minutes about everything we're doing and featuring this. And, I assume that these are running on the cable channel also. This is really working out, I think,
Yeah.
this thing. And I hope that those that don't know about it yet, we maybe put some of this other Dutchess News and,
Right.
and let
Right.
people know, tune to Cablevision or Verizon. If you've cut the cord, you can always go to YouTube, and it's really good to see what's
And we'll
happening.
be having more of it, including interviews with you all and getting more of what we're doing out there, so.
I'm really happy
Which
with
is
the
awesome.
service.
And
Yes.
it really takes a lot of burden off at the events, because you always have that one friend that you're going, oh, can you please get some pictures or video for me while you're running around, and it becomes kind of hodgepodge, but then having something as cohesive as that at one of the events is just
And,
amazing.
Several people, well, more
Yeah.
than several, I'd say, a dozen or more have commented, oh, we got our 10 seconds of fame, in there. We really like that,
And that reminds me,
presentation.
we need to make sure when we get into budget that we find out what appropriate line, I think it's an A-fund expense for the contractor for next year.
Right.
Because I think that it's really pays dividends.
And by the way, the new equipment for this room, I think he's going to start the installation later on this week. So
Great.
maybe by the next board meeting, we'll be
Okay.
up and running for that.
HD.
Yeah.
All right,
Go
so
ahead, Jessica.
Community Day, I'm going to give you guys a very brief update, just because it's been a while since we've been before you on this project. We've been meeting weekly about Community Day. We've got a lot of...
I don't
Oh,
want to
sorry.
interrupt. How is Ralph?
Ralph actually.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but
well,
I
I can
just-
tell you,
Yeah.
basically, Ralph, he fell last week, he broke a rib. He was at Vassar Hospital until today. He was transferred to Wingate at Fishkills for rehabilitation. So I don't know how long he's gonna be there, but, I think the prognosis is good. It's certainly better than it was the last time he was there.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good.
good, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, listen, that's important. We've been meeting weekly for Community Day, and we've got a lot of the major portions of the event in place and are finalizing those. And then what we're doing right now is looping back to the beginning. So with the parade, we've spoken to the village, and they're going to hopefully be giving us their official thumbs up soon. We had mentioned about expanding the parade, more marching bands, things like that. We have 9, which again is a record for us. Our goal was 10, but we have 9, and that's something that we're very proud
Including
of.
brass band,
Including
right?
a brass band.
We're very
And
excited.
a drum line from Brooklyn, which is very, very exciting. So that's shaping up really well. The vendors are starting to roll in. We have a meeting coming up with the school district. They, of course, gave us their approval a while back, but now that we have these concrete plans of we're going to have vendors, we're going to have a stage set up for performances for 2.5 days, we want to go back and present that to them. So right now, the plan is Friday night, we're going to have a DJ. The carnival opens up around 5. Vendors can be there on Friday. And then Saturday is the big show, which is the parade, the fireworks. I've spoken to our fireworks vendor. He's very pleased with the site. He thinks that it's perfect, actually. And the participation's starting to roll in. People do always wait dangerously to the last minute to commit to us, but people are committing a little earlier this time. And most of our vendors are committing for all 3 days, which is exactly what we want to happen. Sunday morning, we're going to be having a car show at the junior high. We have 2 of the rec committee members who are kind of spearheading that. They have a Lamborghini club that's coming. So that's going to be really great. So right now, it's going back and crossing a lot of the T's and dotting a lot of the I's, but this is shaping up to be, I mean, a really enormous event, which is all very good news. We're going to need a lot of help, but it's very good
And
news.
the amusement rides, that's all locked in?
The
and-
contract is signed. We're trying to get them up here for a site visit. They're on Long Island. So that's always a little tricky if they're not traveling up in this area, but we're trying to get them locked in for a site visit. The beautiful thing about that area that we're using is it is so big that we have very few worries of being crunched for space. So we're very excited about that. What
Any
what
questions?
questions do we have?
No?
I delivered some maps to Jessica and Rob, which are large area maps that they can kind of write on and
Okay, good.
brainstorm
Yes.
where things will be located.
Rob's wife laminated them, and he's got Sharpie, and he's taking care of all that.
I know that there was some discussion about some maps of the parade route.
Yes.
I didn't want to start doing that until we got
Oh, we got a
formal
final.
approval from the
Yeah.
village. But those maps will be available once we get the village board to approve, so we can use their streets, and I'll talk to the supervisor to get that.
And I've had discussions with Matt, and he's briefed the board, since it's a new
Yeah.
board. And then I think later this week, I'll be meeting with him further.
And everyone seemed, enthusiastic about it, so that's always a good
Yeah.
start.
That'd be great.
And of course, Bill is our emergency services coordinator for this event, so that's all in very good hands.
So, bringing the emergency services into this, I would just wanted to wait till we had final approval from the village.
Yeah.
Because one of the concerns they may have is overextending their police department, which is understandable, right? So, once that approval comes through, we can talk to the sheriff's office and find out what
Sure.
flexibility exists, similar to what we do for the Dutchess County St. Patrick's Parade, where we bring in other law enforcement agencies to assist, because the village still has to handle the normal calls, right, while the event's going on. So we'll work together and bring everybody in and go from there.
Okay.
I will say we are very lucky to know that that's in Bill's good hands. He's an expert in this, so he's got it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Anything
Jessica.
else?
No, thank you.
All
Thanks
right.
very much.
No problem.
And thank the committee for us, too.
I will.
Okay. Walter, please come up and share some of your observations with respect to how we're doing with MS4, but also, stormwater and any other observations.
I know you requested I come in and throw out some of the challenges we face. Right now, we're doing fine with our permit. We're in compliance with our permit requirements. The biggest challenge is coming soon. The department is probably going to issue a new MS4 permit sooner than later. I suspect maybe sometime later this year. In late 2016, I believe it was late summer, early fall of 2016, they issued a draft 2017 MS4 permit. It went out for public comment. They received volumes of public comment, thousands upon thousands of comments. As part of the MS4 Coordination Committee, myself and 2 other consultants were also tasked with providing comments on that. The permit itself, they actually pulled the permit at that point in time and pretty much went quiet for about a year or so, and then it became active again. It was basically dead in the water for a while, so they could digest all of the comments they received. The permit itself was actually poorly written. It was very, a lot of new restrictions, a lot of new enhanced requirements, restricted timeframes. Typically, when they came out with a new requirement, they'd give you a 5-year implementation period. They've knocked it down to 3 years in some cases, 1 year in other cases. Many of the things they would require additional staff, additional consultants, a lot of technical work that you're just not, able to do on yourself. Some of the other things that were in there were, let's see, well, there was no cost-benefit analysis conducted, and that was one of my questions, and I just never got a response to that.
Is there ever in the state of
It would be nice. I mean, if you read this, your head would have spun.
unfunded mandates? I mean, on a serious note, are a real issue for local municipalities like this.
Exactly.
This is one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, and this one, one thing I know they're not going to pull back on is they're probably going to want you to map your entire conveyance system. Now, I don't know what that implementation period may be. They may give us 5 years, they may give us 3 years. I don't know. But there were many things in the permit of that scope.
Does that include then all wetlands?
No, it would include
What's
all
included?
your conveyance system, your catch basins,
Right.
your
Okay.
outfalls. We already have our outfalls mapped. I'll just throw out something else they wanted on the outfalls initially. Right now, we do dry weather inspections of our outfalls when we can. If we notice something discharging from it, we'll take note of it, we'll document it, we'll take photographs, note the color or any odor. If it's something very suspicious, we would act on it. Say we suspected a failed septic system. We would probably have some testing done and see if we could find the source and eliminate it. But in the new permit, they wanted all outfalls to be, tested and taken to a lab on any discharge, and you just don't have the staff. And speaking about the budget and an unfunded mandate, this would be quite severe. There were some municipalities in Putnam County and Westchester County that actually ran the numbers on this permit. Now, granted, some of those are located in New York City, east of Hudson watershed, but they were talking anywhere from $300,000 to $600,000 per year to implement this new program. There was numerous things in it that actually didn't even make common sense. Some of the things off the top of my head, I could think of, they wanted the highway department to sweep the streets once a month, year-round.
Oh, my goodness.
It doesn't even make any sense. There was a number of things like that. There was just, I guess, a severe lack of understanding of how things really work down in the trenches on the local level. So, long story short, they received a lot of public comment. We provided some comments. I suspect there'll be another draft permit out sometime this year. There'll probably be a public comment period again. We'll provide more public comment, but I don't know how far they're going to pull that back and wait on it. They're probably getting some pressure from the EPA because this has been delayed for 2 years now. So they are holding some roundtable discussions, but they're very limited as far as participation. Years ago, when they had a new construction permit out, they would have 25, 30 people up there in Albany. You could sign up. I went up on a couple of occasions, and they actually took some of our suggestions and, either eliminated them from the permit or added them. So that's not happening this time around. I understand there are some regional entities that are meeting with them, but no individuals that I know of. So again, I will keep you posted probably more often than not as this comes down, anything I hear on this, because this could have a severe impact on your budgets. And that's the other thing. They're not looking at, when you sit down and draft your budget, I mean, this thing could come out with an effective date that just you haven't budgeted for either. So you could have a portion of the year where you don't have any budget for this. So we'll just have to
Scary.
scrape by with however we can, so.
That's how they operate.
Yep.
yeah.
They don't have any concern for us because we're going to have the most impact when we tax people on a town level.
That's right, you have
They're
a
not-
tax cap.
Right, we have a tax cap we have to stay under, and, ridiculous requirements that are probably well beyond any tangible, outcome. What determines that a municipality is an MS4 versus a non-MS4?
It's basically the census.
Okay, so it's population-based?
1,000 people per square mile.
Okay.
1,000.
Okay.
Town of Unionville was recently designated, just in the past couple of years or so. So they keep designating new
Right.
MS4s.
Yeah, so I mean, a town like Unionville, I'm sure Steve can attest to this, that has an even smaller budget, to be held to the same standard as a municipality that has a larger budget, it just, I understand we need to be
sense, but it is
sensitive.
what it is.
We need to be sensitive to the discharge, and we need to do our due diligence in reminding people not to dump anything down the storm drain. But at the same time, we've been responsible with MS4 since day one, and I know the village has also. John Carge is the MS4 coordinator there. And, you know, you can be as responsible as your neighbor, but you still could get whacked with a big expense.
Well, when you start spreading your staff around like this too, you really can't focus on where you might have real problems, you know, I mean, one of the other things right now, we do have a lot of active construction sites. I believe we have 8 active construction sites right now, which is a fair amount. You know, typically it's 4 or 5. So, I mean, that's another thing that we have to keep on top of. You have heavy rainfall events, things happen. So we try to be a little proactive on that. That's one of the other little issues out there. But the biggest issue, again, coming down the pike is this new permit. Something else that's somewhat challenging, and maybe the people that sit at the planning board can attest to that, is with the new green infrastructure practices that have come out that are required, and this is reviewed at the planning board level under the general construction permit, it gets into a difficult game sometimes with regards to inspection and maintenance. It gets into a lot of legal issues, and I'll use a couple examples. Typical examples are, you have to be required to utilize green infrastructure unless you can prove otherwise. The most common are rain gardens and bioretention areas. A lot of times they're in someone's backyard, or you might have a bioretention area on, say, Lot 2 for the benefit of Lot 3 and Lot 1. Is the town going to maintain the facilities? Is the homeowner going to maintain the facilities? Are you going to have maintenance agreements between? And it gets into like a who's on first. And I'm sure I go through this in LaGrange quite often. I know the town of Wappinger does as well. It's just a challenge, and it's something I know you're not dealing with, but I know it can be quite challenging at the level of the planning board. The only other thing of note is your stormwater management program annual report is due in the DEC on June 1st. I'll be just sitting down with the superintendent of highways, and I'll have that report completed shortly after that. And then I'll probably request to be on the first meeting in May, just to present it has to be held at a public meeting, and then we'll provide a PDF to the town clerk, copies for the town board, brief presentation, and just get it off to the department. I could go on about many other things, but I think the main thing is just kind of keep an eye out for this permit, and I will keep you all, if anything I hear, I'll request to come in or sit down with supervisor.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Walter. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, really. Thank you.
Next item, discussion, David, come on up and,
Is it okay to do it from here?
yeah, you do it from there.
So I believe you're aware that there's a New York State law called the Ag and Markets Law. And a community's land use regulations are supposed to be in conformance with the Ag and Markets Law, the state law. But the town of Wappinger has never actually done that. We've talked about it over the years, but we've never actually done that. The fact that the town's local land use regulations are not in conformance with the state law came up recently in the context of the Dutchess County Planning Department's farm-friendly audit. They actually looked at the zoning law and the comprehensive plan of all the communities in Dutchess County and did sort of a matrix, yes or no, whether the community's regulations are in conformance with the state law. And as you might imagine, we got a lot of no's in the zoning law, fewer no's in the comprehensive plan. The town attorney's office and we have been recommending over the years that the town of Wappinger adopt code amendments to bring the local regulations in conformance with the state law and to make things more farm-friendly. So assuming that it's okay with the town board, we would actually go ahead and do that at this point. Draft a local law and something that the town board could entertain and then conceivably adopt.
Sure. Do we know the
Agree with that.
resolution for that?
Yeah, do we?
I don't think you need
Need a
it.
resolution to authorize him to do that? No, I don't think so. Jim?
Jim?
I mean, if you just want to, if you want to make a resolution, it's fine, but
Couldn't hurt, but
couldn't hurt.
Okay.
I also would want to make sure, if we're going to be promulgating zoning regulations, that we make sure the comprehensive plan that we spent many, many moons on. If there's any sections of the comprehensive plan that deal with farm-friendly zoning or farm-friendly regulations, that those pages be updated also. Because I don't want to open the can of worms of doing a full comprehensive plan review and amendment, because that's a very tedious process that it's not the right time to start that right now, in my opinion. But if we're going to be dealing with farm-friendly aspects, I think we can at least take a look at those parts of the comprehensive plan.
Sure, sure. The Dutchess County Planning Department did identify the areas where we do in the comprehensive plan, where we are farm-friendly, and other sections where we're not. So it's just a matter of tweaking.
That would be good, because then we can actually get to the finish line in a reasonable amount of time.
Yep.
So, historically, the town, Barbara can attest to it, and some of the people on, probably Joe and Bill remember, MVK. We've had issues over the years.
I remember them.
We've had issues over the years with farm operations in a certified ag district. So, we've had Bob Summers of Ag and Markets come visit us and, write memos and various litigation that we've had over the years. So that's primarily where, we have the biggest issues in the code. And one of the recommendations that the county makes is, in essence, to tie our local zoning to the ag and markets, because it seems probably every year or every 2 years in Albany, they keep adding farm operations to what is permitted in an ag district. It used to be just typical livestock and crop raising, and now there's commercial horse boarding operations, farm distilleries, farm breweries, weight deer farming, things you've never, I believe ostrich raising is allowed. Steve can attest, out in Unionville, Unionville has a lot of experience with various farm operations, but, so those are, the town is stuck basically with respect to the certified ag districts. One of the issues that comes up is startup operations. So it's difficult for a farm operation to get started if you're not already in an ag district. So if someone has 10 acres out, off of Robinson Lane or someplace out there, and they want to start a farm operation, but they're not in an ag district, they're regulated by the current zoning. So that's the one thing that, I think that the board should look at, is how it should, how it intends to treat the potential for farm operations. Obviously, farm operations typically have to be on large. No one's going to put a farm operation in Rockingham.
Right.
Or something like that.
Rockingham Farms?
In Rockingham Farms, right. No farms in
We'll
Rockingham.
play on words.
So, but, at the time some of the zoning was drafted, it basically contemplates no farming in Rockingham Farms, because that's what, a lot of the zoning originally, when it was adopted, kind of prohibited is, it's saw farming as a nuisance to, residential development. And that's, in essence, carried on in a lot of zoning codes, because that's at the genesis that they were drafted. And since then, New York State has adopted the right to farm in the 80s. So
Right, yeah.
that's changed, how a lot of these things are contemplated. So, and as David said, it's mentioned in the comprehensive plan, how it actually progressed into the details of the code itself. It never really made
Yeah,
it.
our zoning law makes little reference to the ag and markets law. The ag and markets law, about 98% of it has to do with county-adopted, state-certified ag districts. And it's in those ag districts that farmers get this special protection and some leniency with respect to the process, the approval process, a fair amount of leniency. As Jim is saying, outside the county-adopted, state-certified ag districts is a different story. So we'll have two standards, actually, in the zoning law.
Well, I think we need to clean it up. We also need to be cautious of, there was an issue in Orange County that happened where a farm decided there's obviously a lot of incentives to do the, hops and, making beer and distilling and all that. Well, there was a farm in Orange County that took it to the next level and started, hosting weddings and hosting, Friday night karaoke at the farm, and it became a commercial operation that many viewed above and beyond what the context of farming was.
Right.
So I think that when we look at this, we want to make sure that if there are parameters for any restrictions, not that I'm against, barn weddings, because I've done many of them, but we want to understand that when we put this together, that if we're going to be defining what farming is consistent with ag and markets, that also we have parameters in place where certain types of out-of-definition activities wouldn't be inadvertently permitted.
Right.
Well, and ag and markets does consider certain wedding, there's a lot of guidance in ag and markets, and it flows from wineries, and so there's a lot of ag and markets guidance on that.
Okay.
On that particular issue.
So as you look through this, if we can keep our eye on the ball there,
Yep.
and I'll just make a motion off the floor to authorize the planner and the attorney to begin this process. If you want to create a subsequent resolution to
No, that's
further-
fine, that's fine, we can do it
Okay.
off the floor.
I just don't want to delay it.
I'll second it.
Yeah, that's
needs to
fine.
happen.
There's a motion and
Thank you,
second.
David.
All in
Thank you.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Motion passed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Looking forward to see what you come
Thanks.
back with.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Barbara? And this is kind of a combination of Barbara and Jim, with their respective fields, too.
So the first one is Fieldstone. So Fieldstone, last year, we sent them letters in June, letting them know that some of them had encroached onto our park conservation land. There were also deed restrictions that they should have been told about. So each one got a letter with the deed restrictions and a survey of their property so they could see where their boundaries were. 2 more letters went out in August, and we held an informal meeting in September to let them know what was happening. There were a lot of questions. A lot of people that are newer to the neighborhood, it turns over, were not aware of a lot of the restrictions. So the 4 main issues are encroachments. Not only is it an issue that some of the residents there have encroached in our property, but there's also an issue with our property having trees that after all these years may fall. They may be on our property, which isn't a problem, but they may be falling onto some of the residential properties. So for that, perhaps a survey of this property once and for all would help. I'll leave that to the board. The second issue is there's an empty lot on the loop there. There's a resident that has been taking care of it for a very long time. He would like to continue to take care of it. And I don't think, Jim, we really know how that one lot was developed, just in a sense, not developed, where it stayed empty. So Jim has said maybe with a license agreement, he could continue to keep it.
It's, on the lot is basically, if you're coming right up Fieldstone, it's straight ahead. It has a common mailbox on it. It's unclear, it's totally different than all of the rest of the property. The rest of the property has basically been reserved as open space, but this one lot, it may have been intended to be a playground at some point in time, but it never was developed. By the end of the planning board process, it was never developed as a playground. It has some community mailboxes on it. That's a separate issue that we're not quite sure who has responsibility for the mailboxes.
But the post office claims it doesn't have it.
Post office says it doesn't have it. They were on town property. Ultimately, we don't even know who's been maintaining the mailboxes. On this particular lot, there was a foundation. There's evidence of a rebar and some concrete where the boxes probably were. At some point in time, they were relocated, whether they were hit and moved. So the records, unfortunately, with respect to some of these issues in Fieldstone, and then there's 2 other locations, I believe, in Fieldstone where there's also mailboxes within the town right-of-way. Again, we're not sure, we're not aware of anybody in the town who maintains them. The post office claims they're not responsible for them, so it's some question as to who maintains them. But with respect to the one lot in the middle there, a neighbor has planted a garden, has maintained it. In essence,
The garden being trees and
Trees, and
shrubs,
there's
and
some-
very
Flowers
tasteful,
sort of
very
thing,
nice.
yeah.
some shrubs and some plantings. So in essence, it's kind of like the adopt a highway situation. So we would, I have some adopt a highway type language, which is technically a license agreement, which would authorize this owner to continue the practice of maintaining that property.
So we own that property.
Correct. It's owned, technically title is in the Fieldstone Conservation Park District, as administered by the
Okay.
town board.
So this is not an HOA up there, right?
No.
There's not an HOA. I mean, if it came in today, and that's, it's totally unclear why there's no HOA, because that's really the way it should have been. Because again, most of the restrictions, the deed restrictions that Barbara are talking about, are the typical deed restrictions that you would see in a condominium, you know.
Right.
No sheds, or no clotheslines, or no,
Right.
you know, whatever it was. But for whatever reason, the common area was granted to the town and the bigger issue is it was deeded to the town as a park.
Right.
Which instantly invokes the alienation park doctrine. So it must be used for park purposes, and to change it to something else, we'd have to go to Albany to get that changed. So
When you first started talking about the parcel that we weren't sure what the purpose was, Elmara versus Town of Wappinger came to mind, which, if you get a chance to read that one.
Amara?
Elmara versus Town of Wappinger.
O'Mara versus the Town of
Elmara,
Wappinger,
okay.
yes.
You can read that one and learn about that process, which didn't end well. But in this case, we own that property, so it's a similar situation. You know, Ye Olde Apple Orchard comes to mind,
Oh, yeah.
Hamlet Court comes to mind. We have all these like early 60s developments, it seems, where they had this process that was a little bit inconsistent with the way we would do it today.
Right.
Right? So a license agreement, which I like the adopt a highway parallel that you drew, perhaps that's the best. But what happens if another neighbor says, no, I want to take care of it?
Well, again, you know, we have, if somebody else wants to take care of a portion of it, then, you know, we could.
How do you
we could-
So far,
split,
there's
how do you
been no
split it
volunteers.
up?
There's been-
Right, but I mean,
But
that's
again,
a very
that's-
valid point. If somebody
Just
moves
saying.
in
So-
and says, I don't like these flowers, I
You can
want
sign up
this
next year.
flower.
This year,
Yeah, you know, who makes that decision?
So, I mean, that's, again, that's, and that's the other, you know, the flip side is, you know, if the neighbors aren't taking care of it, it would then be the town's responsibility, so.
Because on Hamlet Court, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a time where residents were mowing Hamlet Court, and then that resident decided they didn't want to mow it anymore, and they started calling here saying, how come the town's not doing it? And there was a question, well, what do you mean? That's not the town's responsibility, and then I believe we found out that it was the town's responsibility. So, you know, if we can get a resident to sign something that they're going to plant their daffodils there and take care of it, I think that's a
No,
win-win.
he's, you know, the resident's very interested in doing
Great.
that.
I mean, the resident had offered to purchase it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we'd have to.
Right.
We can't
you know,
do that.
Can't do
We'd have
that.
to go to Albany.
And I also would support your idea with getting a survey done while we're doing all this now, so that we can, you know, we issue a license agreement for somebody to take care of that. We get a survey done so we know where the delineation is between responsibilities.
Right.
So I'll move
Yeah.
to authorize a survey.
And I think, you know, one further comment, how this really started, at least during our current administration, is that poor Steve had to keep going out there to figure out what trees are where and the drainage, and then
We
we
just had a
saw.
call last week.
And You know, and so
Yeah.
we need to have the survey actually to help figure out where his responsibilities are.
Well, if one of our trees falls on somebody,
That's right.
We
that's the
have
other thing.
to, yeah,
Well,
that's our responsibility.
Several years ago, a tree fell and broke a fence, and the neighbor called, the property owner called and complained to the town. And when we went out and looked, the fence was on the town property. So
Hey.
they broke our fence.
So again, I'll move to authorize the survey, just so we can get this done. Now's the time, you know, grass is starting to grow.
The one thing with respect to the survey, to give everyone notice going forward, it would be appropriate to put suitable concrete, some sort of monuments out there in the field so that, you know, there's visible evidence of where the town's property begins and ends.
All right, so I'll amend it to
Yeah.
include the proper monuments, so people, there's no question where the line is.
Correct.
Yeah, I'll second
There is a
that.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Motion passed unanimously.
As inexpensively as possible. We don't need big monuments of Councilman Cosmas or Supervisor Thurston out there.
Well, that will help.
You notice he didn't mention Bill Deal.
That's not my ward, so. In Ward 1, you know.
What a rough group here.
And two other items out there, just to close this down. So many of the residents have put in 6-foot-high fences around the back for privacy or to keep animals out. So in their deed restrictions, it says no fences over 3 foot. But as Jim found a way around that, it says around the patio, and he said a rear yard is a patio, so we're not going to enforce that for the 6 foot. A lot of people have spent a lot of money putting in wrought iron fences down the side, they're 4 feet high. So we're not encouraging it, but I'm not going to go out and enforce it at
I
this
can't
point.
see doing any sort of act at this point to have somebody take something down that they spent money on. But moving forward, we're going to know where the lines are. We need to make sure the residents understand, you know, what's on that side of the line and what's on this side of the line. And then 5 years down the road, we can have this conversation again if somebody decides to build a fence after we put the, you know, mark in.
Right.
Exactly.
And
And
then it could
sheds
be
have been,
addressed, yeah.
unfortunately, sheds have been an issue. There are a few people who still have sheds. We can't approve them, we can't give building permits to them. They can have an outbuilding that's attached to their home, as an extension to their home, and they can have these garden boxes that are small. They can put storage under their decks, and that type of thing, but we had to come to some agreement. If we allow the sheds that are there to stay illegally, we can't issue permits. And then I can,
Any sheds that are out there were put up without permits. So from our investigation, any of the sheds that were there were not put up with any permits, so they weren't legally existing in the first instance.
So what do we do?
they have to be removed.
There's approximately 3 or 4 of them.
I would say give them, you know, enough time to find a place to put all their tools and stuff, you know?
Well, they've
mean-
been on notice since last June.
Okay, right.
Oh, they
And
already,
and I
okay.
have to tell you, in the meeting in September, they were told to register sheds or other issues that had come up. And I believe to this date, only 3 people came in and registered anything. So they were given a lot of opportunity. So we spoke about this earlier, and I figured June 1st. You know, they were told through May 15th, but seeing we're at the end of April, I think June 1st is fair. They've been on notice.
I agree with that. I think
Yeah.
that's very fair.
Fine. Okay.
All right?
Okay, and, you know, no
Next.
further encroachments will
No
be allowed.
further
They have,
encroachments.
Okay.
where they've extended out beyond the,
To the extent, you know, the discussion regarding sheds, and this is maybe an issue for the building department, but to the extent, you know, the sheds are attached to the structures, as a code, or as our zoning code is written, that would not be considered to be an outbuilding. However, I don't know if it raises any building code issues, so,
It has to be on the up and up.
right.
They'd need a permit, and we'd have to look at the density. and, you know.
Well,
They can't just
for-
drag it over here and over there.
For safety
Well, they
reasons,
could.
too. I
Could.
mean, gosh,
Again,
you know.
It's gotta see if it meets code, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, common sense
I think we're
hopefully
doing, I
prevails.
think we're going above and beyond with
Yeah,
trying
so
to
thank
be
you
reasonable.
for, but it's hard to enforce it without our
Exactly.
side knowing
Right,
where the property is and their side.
I agree.
So,
For being fair.
okay? And I have the next.
next
item.
one, yep.
So the next, just to give you an update, Tractor Supply, which is going south of Acura. They came in last week to the planning board the entrance that they were going to use was going to be shared with Acura, because Acura has an easement over part of it. But for safety reasons, they're looking to have a shared access with Acura, but down in their lot. So most of Acura's traffic comes from their building in the back. So the planning board didn't have a problem with it. It actually looked like a good idea. So if this goes through, Acura will have the entrance coming in on 9, and then their traffic will then enter into the Tractor Supply lot and exit with Tractor Supply's traffic. So they're looking at this now. Then we're waiting for them to resubmit at this point. Central Hudson has been before the planning board a few times. We closed their public hearing at the last meeting on the 15th, and they're on May 6th for a vote. We had a lot of comments from the public, and they answered it in writing. I gave you a copy of their answers there. And lastly, Sergeant Palmetier Road. The Dutchess County Legislature on April 15th voted to deed over that portion of the road that enters into Old Hopewell. When that comes through for us and it's deeded to us, the owner can come back to the planning board and continue with the subdivision, at which time the plans will be met so that that part will be closed, and Sergeant Palmetier will continue through what is now the site that's creating apartment buildings, and then we'll come out across from Hark Plaza, which will be safer at that intersection for queuing.
We just have to make sure that the tractor trailers that are delivering these cars every single day to these car dealerships are going to be able to navigate that. Because someone has expressed concern to me after this entire process. I looked at the plans that you sent me. It looks kind of tight. So I understand there's a turn lane on Old Hopewell Road that's proposed to get into Sergeant Palmetier Way, but you're looking at some pretty significant angles. The reason why we approved this to begin with is because school buses coming out of Sergeant Palmetier Way now, coming across 5 lanes of traffic to get south on Route 9, somebody making a right or a tractor trailer making a right could be a catastrophic situation. So this is going to improve that, but at the same time, we need to make sure that this is going to be realistic for these car carriers, because there are many of them that have to go in that way to get to Toyota, get to the Nissan, and it's something that we need to look at.
So the concern is the right off of Old Hopewell?
Both directions, coming in and out, because you can go around the other way, but getting in and out, it's hard to see on paper what it's going to look like, but we just need to understand.
What about ladder trucks? Fire
That
department?
was already looked at. The
Okay,
fire
that
trucks,
was-
they actually, on one of the site plans, it actually has the dimensions of the largest fire apparatus. So that's been looked at.
Okay.
But the largest fire apparatus is still smaller than the car carriers.
Trucks. So we'll make sure that that's looked at
And I'm
when
sure
they come back.
the planning board chairman has looked at this, but now as we get ready to see shovel into dirt, before we do this, and before we do it exactly to the way that it's been approved, we need to make sure that logistically it's going to work.
The geometry of both entrances, I don't think have been finalized.
Okay.
I think there's been, because the Dutchess County DPW hasn't issued a final approval on the intersection.
Okay.
Because part of it was, the coordination with this, because the property that was just deeded over by the county came to the county from the state.
Right.
That was the holdup. It took us probably close to 2 years to get it out of
Right.
the state. And that came in probably, I want to say, in January. So it took the state 2 years to get it, and it took the county,
It
2 months.
it definitely cleans up that intersection, but down the road, we're gonna have to look at Five Star, we're gonna have to look at that other property that's vacant, because my understanding is there's still some sort of either state or county easement on the old state road on the opposite side where it comes to Route 9. You know what I'm saying?
So where Five Star is, that was actually abandoned to the town.
Okay, so we control
So
that.
the town actually has the driveway out of Five Star onto Old Route 9 is actually over town right-of-way.
Right, so I don't want to get into a tangent now, but along the same lines of what we're talking about, for future development, because I'm sure we can agree that we want to see something that looks better than what we see right now over there. That's something we're going to keep our eye on, because if somebody wants to take both parcels and do something, you know, like a quick check or a Wawa or something that's going to, you know, and they end up running into issues with Route 9, which they will, we want to make sure the town aspect of that is properly deeded before we get to that point, you know? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Next item I had on the agenda is relating to the liquor store extension. Bill, you were going to check into.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, those that are familiar with what had happened at the county level, the county legislature had approved a resolution to authorize liquor stores to remain open till 9 PM, and I think there were some other stipulations in there as well. And basically, they're authorizing it to go to the State Liquor Authority for approval. It was vetoed by the county executive because he wanted more public comment, period. I've reached out to a manager at Viscount who actually enlightened me a little bit. Apparently, there's more contention about this than many might realize.
There's a lot.
Between the small liquor stores and the large liquor stores. Some feel that they're being forced to stay open to compete with the larger stores. My position on this is we wait till after the public comment period that are being provided by the county legislature, so we can hear input from anyone that wants to comment. My personal opinion, I thought, would be to support this because many people come home on the train and maybe want to stop in later, but I also want it to be fair.
Right.
I don't want to inadvertently support something that's going to hurt the little guy, right? So I would prefer to wait till after those comment periods, and then if we need to take a position, we can discuss it then.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's why I wanted to raise it to everyone.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll talk about that in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Steve?
Some development with the Inspiration Field project. The storage shed has been ordered. The engineering firm is working on a site plan that would include both the restroom building and the storage shed. And they're putting together a design for the septic system then for the restroom. And then tomorrow, we're meeting with the contractor who installed the rubberized surface to look at that and see what we can do with the new situation that was reported at the last meeting. Should have more to report then.
So originally, we were thinking that we might be able to have information with respect to the field surface before tonight, but since we don't in the meetings tomorrow, then I think we'll want to table that resolution when
agree.
we get to that. So
Right, we'll have a-
Steve and the engineers and the
information.
company give us more information, more certainty, more clarity.
Okay, I'll table that, move to table.
Yeah, when we get to it, we can table it.
That's pretty much where that project's at.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, that's the last of our discussion items, so we'll move into the resolution portion of the meeting for additional resolutions that we didn't do off the floor. So, first item would be Resolution 2019-91. This is a resolution accepting a performance agreement secured by a surety bond for the Maloney Heights subdivision. This item that we've tabled several times. We have gotten the bond, the additional bonding, which Mr. Haran has reviewed. It takes it from $384,000 to $621,480. And Jim and I and Barbara, we've all reviewed that, and so it's in order.
So just one comment to tie this back into Walt Artis's presentation. At the time, this application originally came in, I believe, 2007, 2008 was when the bond was accepted. The cost for the drainage improvements for the MS4 facilities was $385,000. It's now $629,000 for the same number of lots.
Yep.
So there's almost doubling the cost for the MS4 requirements for the subdivision by waiting 11 years.
So these MS4 requirements are not only potentially challenge for the town, but also for applicants.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, so, okay, I'll move it.
Okay, so move, second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is Resolution 2019-95. This is what I recommend we table till the next meeting.
Okay.
This is a resolution authorizing repairs to the field service at
Move to
Innsbruck.
table.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes to table. Next resolution is number 2019-98. This is a resolution approving and authorizing the adoption of the Dutchess County Hazard Mitigation Plan and Municipal Annex. You know, Bill, do you have some comments on that?
So this is just an update, really, to the Dutchess County Hazard Mitigation Plan, Town of Wappinger Annex. This is a quick turnover. I think I just emailed you this today. So we want to make sure that our annex remains updated, because as mitigation funding becomes available, the town of Wappinger, along with every other municipality in Dutchess County, is eligible for federal funding for mitigation projects. So some of the projects that were previously identified are completed now.
I wanted to say.
There's just some minor changes that Barbara Birdie had recommended. I'd like to get this updated so that when funding becomes available, which generally is around June, we will be in a position to apply for that funding for any of these projects. Really, mitigation funding, very quickly, is just federal money that's available after a disaster occurs in another area.
Okay.
So when there's money available, you put it towards mitigation. For every dollar you spend on mitigation, it saves you X number of dollars. I don't know the exact number offhand, but it's a good practice, so I'd like to move this.
I have a question, though.
Sure.
On page 31, packet page 31, there's a mitigation initiative regarding development of communications and continuing of an operations plan. Isn't that something that we're already doing with Dana Smith? Because he mentioned that when he walked around with us when we did the, after the microburst.
Develop a communications and continuity of operations plan,
Great.
including emergency notification system.
I mean,
Yeah, so
isn't that already in place that we're doing with the county?
there-
With
right-
Dana, I thought?
Well, right now, Coop and Cog is another separate initiative. By putting it into this package, it allows the town to receive federal funding to develop that system as well. So, yes, the county is in the process of doing a Coop and Cog plan, but the Coop and Cog plan is starting at the county level. Towns would have to fund their own initiative. By having it listed here, it gives us the ability to be eligible for federal funding for that. So that's what that means.
Okay.
If you don't have it,
Thanks.
if you don't have it in this annex, then you can't use federal money for it. So some of this stuff is kind of a blanket, so that if federal money becomes available.
Right.
I just didn't want it to be redundant.
No, there's no redundancy at all, because I use Homeland Security funding on a federal level to do the county emergency management plans. I cannot use that funding, with the exception of mitigation funding, for local municipalities. That has to be for counties and some cities. For towns, if you are part of a multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, which in this county, every single municipality is, that's not
Right.
common, we can use federal mitigation funding for the projects, but they have to be identified in this annex. So that's one of them.
Okay?
Okay.
We have a
Thank you.
motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. And next item is Resolution 2019-99. This is a resolution authorizing a refund to 2345 LLC. The refund's in the amount of $893.71. for
I'll
this.
move it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Motion passed. Next item is Resolution 2019-100. This is a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds for computer purchase. This $900. This is for a computer for the new account clerk typist for Frederick that we had approved previously and is already on board.
Move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. Next item is Resolution 2019-101. This is a resolution authorizing a refund of $270 escrow to Dusomi Holdings LLC. This is with respect to DeGarmo Plaza, the Duncan facility there.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? This motion passes. Now, the next item on the agenda is a resolution 2019-102. This is authorizing a refund of $784.15 escrow to Jusamia Holdings as well, for the Duncan site plan at the Garmo Plaza.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is a resolution declaring May as Mental Health, Month in the town of Wappinger. As you know, mental health has become a serious area of focus for us for health and welfare of people throughout the country, let alone the town. So this is a resolution that we have.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. The next resolution is 2019-104. This is a resolution appointing seasonal laborers in Buildings and Grounds Department. It's for 3 laborers. It would be effective the April 23rd, $15 an hour. We have been reviewing it with the Dutchess County Department of Human Resources. Steve, do you want to make some comments first?
These are all funded in the 2019 balance, and is historically how we maintain the parks through the summer months.
Jim, did you have anything else on?
No.
So we have been communicating, and I think have it cleared from the Dutchess County Department of Human Resources.
One thing that,
Excuse me.
we should, it's been requested that we send up the information to the county before they're hired, rather than after they've been hired, which has happened frequently in the past.
So we'll start after tonight. I'll move.
Well, these are the same people that were hired that you had last year, right? This is
One return, 2 new.
2 new.
They've
And
been-
you interviewed them and you recommend them, correct? Okay, based upon that, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? This motion passed.
Just one thing, are we still short one seasonal? All right,
Yes.
so we're going to talk about this before the next meeting.
Right.
That's all.
Yep. Yeah, Steve
Want to
and I
make sure
have
he's
had
got
the
the right
discussion.
number of mowers out there.
Yeah.
going.
Particularly, too, with some of the increase burden that he's had with other areas.
He's
such
had
as
an,
what
he's
we
had an
talked-
increase? A bird?
Yeah. It's like with the Conservation Park District.
No, you're doing a great job, Steve. We want to make sure you have the tools to do it. Thank you.
That's right. The next item is a resolution 2019-105. This is for correspondence. Barbara caught, actually, that one of the letters in there from Lorenzo L. Angelino should not be in there, so we're pulling that. That's actually related to the Fishkill, I think, wasn't it? East Fishkill issue. So we're pulling
Regarding
this
the
from the
restaurant or
correspondence
something?
being.
I'll make the motion with that amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion passed. We already took care of a resolution for farm friendly, right? So that's taken care of. I have no other resolutions. Anybody has anything that they'd like to
I
raise?
do have a question.
Sure.
At the last meeting that I was at, Jim, I had mentioned something about the speed limit in the construction zone where
Well,
the water
we,
situation is, where it was supposed to be, because it is in a construction area, 30 miles an hour, and it's 40. And I was wondering, do we have any
Well, I-
information on that, please?
did some research.
Okay.
We don't have any records. The town does not set our own speed limits. They're set by
No,
the
I
state.
didn't say the town did,
I'm
but,
just saying, we don't have records for what the speed limit is for River Road.
okay, but
I
my
don't-
question was, when New York City came before the planning board, David, tell me if I'm correct,
Mm-hmm.
when they came before the planning board, because this was a construction zone, that the speed limit on River Road and Chelsea Road was going to be 30 miles an hour until the construction was finished. And that's not what I see.
Right.
And I'm trying to understand why not, because it is in front of where New York City is doing the work.
So,
It's not up to the town.
well, again, the town, theoretically, the highway superintendent has the authority to set a lower speed limit in construction zones.
But this was already agreed to. That's what I don't understand why it's not
New
changed.
York City doesn't set the speed limits, we do.
I
So-
understand that.
But the one thing is, right now, at least we set temporary speed limits for construction
Right.
purposes. Right now, the town has, I met with Joe and we went over the records.
Joe, who?
Joe Paoloni, the town clerk. The town clerk does not have a file. We can't find a file in the town clerk's office. with the orders from New York State DOT setting the speed limits in the town. So we have to get what the speed limits in the town are from New York State DOT. There's some of the signs that are posted throughout the town are conflicting. There's speed limit signs in the town that says town speed limit 30 miles an hour.
No, I understand that, but this area, Chelsea Road and River Road, is specific to being a construction area.
Again,
Until this is over, which is, from what I was told at the planning board and agreed to at the planning board, was for at least 10 years.
Again, I can't find any information in the town that the speed limit is 40. It may well be 30.
We don't even know what the town's
No,
doing.
it's 40. And because of
But
that,
again, it's-
okay,
It's
but
not, there's no record that the speed limit is 40.
that's fine. But my question is, because this is a construction area, why is it not 30?
Again, we
Well,
have to.
well, the councilwoman's making a good point, because I sat right here in this spot, okay, when New York City DEP was in here, and this conversation actually occurred.
Yes.
It did occur at the town board level as well. And we were trying to think outside the box, how we could create a safer situation. And I'm pretty sure there was a discussion about, okay, we can't change the speed limit, but we can, we can stipulate them to have a construction zone that the speed limit is reduced in. I'm pretty sure that conversation occurred, so I agree with your point.
Are we prevented from doing that now?
Well, I don't know if it was ever done.
But
Well,
the
that's what
rest
I'm
of the
saying. If it
road is
wasn't done, then-
changed, wait. The rest of the road was changed from 40 to 30.
But we can't find any records of that.
Well, I have signs up on
Again,
the road. So I live there. I have residents complaining to me. So we
This-
need to have it fixed, please, as soon as we
The-
can, somehow.
What we need, legally, the speed limit is changed by an order from the New York State Department of Transportation. What's on the sign, unless there's an order from the New York State DOT, that sign is not enforceable.
How do we apply to get an order?
Jim, logically, okay, logically,
I'm speaking legally, not speaking.
whatever, logically and from a safety point of view, it's 40 miles an hour from where they're doing major construction, and then it turns to 30. So we need to get this fixed very fast, somehow. I don't know what has to be done, and I would also like to have a study done, which have been done in other areas of the town, to make it permanently 30 miles an hour.
It
So
may-
there's two
It
things.
may well be 30 miles.
No, it's not,
Well,
but I need to have it fixed. One thing.
Traffic studies haven't always been the best use of our resources and money, so.
I didn't say
I'm not
they
too
were, but there
sure.
was one that has been done in other parts of the town.
Yes, and we've talked about in the past that they weren't the best use of our resources, so before we start spending money on that, we should think about it. But I certainly do understand your predicament, but I don't think the panacea is a traffic study. I think it spends money and we get to the same place where we
No,
usually are in the
but
first place.
for at least the 10 years that this construction is going on, and the trucks that have been going down there, to go 40 miles an hour and then change to 30 miles within a stretch.
No, I understand your
of
argument. I'm
30
just saying this, the traffic study isn't necessarily
Right,
the
but-
answer. That's all I'm saying. Before we start spending money on it, I think we need to take a
Right.
second look on what we should do.
I can understand that, but right now, because of this construction that is going on, this needs to be fixed, and I'd like to know how we get it fixed as soon as possible.
so in the short term, can the highway superintendent create a construction zone that's 30 miles per hour?
I believe so. I'll look
Okay,
at it.
well, I
But I
don't,
need to know for sure,
Yeah, let's-
because we talked about this
It
a
can't
month
be-
and a half ago.
I think what you're saying is, it's 30 down below, right, in the
Right.
hamlet, right?
No, it's, here, this is what it is.
Okay.
Here's the water department.
Right.
Where they're doing all the construction. Right to that point right there, it turns 40 miles an hour. You go 20, 25 feet, it turns back to 30.
Okay, so the area where the trucks are
Right
coming
in
in and
front.
out of is 40.
Right.
There should be,
It
and
looks-
probably because there was supposed to be a construction zone in that area.
Well,
It's posted that.
It's 40 miles an hour, I believe, from when you first turn onto North River Road
Right.
from Old State Road. And it's 40 miles an hour just outside the hamlet along the train tracks by the property that Chelsea.
But when you go
owns.
under the power lines, it should go to 30. The speed
Right.
should reduce as you approach the DEP site.
I mean, but.
Exactly.
If you, what's strange is if you make the right onto North River Road, it says 40 miles an hour. If you're going straight on Old State Road, it says town speed limit 30 miles an hour.
So I understand your point that we don't know what the town speed limit is,
This is
but I think for the councilwoman, for safety purposes, we need to figure out a way to make it 30 miles per hour in the area where all these heavy trucks are coming in and out of, because it's crazy that that is unmarked.
Right.
When I know there were conversations
Yes.
held at 2 different board levels.
Exactly.
And David, you were probably at both
you
of the
were-
meetings.
You were, when I was the vice chair on the planning board, it was agreed to.
I agree with you entirely, so we have to find a way to do it.
So
clearly.
I'd
Jim,
like to
can we
know
have a
the next-
motion? Because I support it as
Yeah.
well, you know.
Well,
to-
the highway superintendent has the statutory ability to do it.
It would be the highway superintendent.
We don't have to
But
authorize
I don't, do we know for sure?
That's why you
that
say
he
no,
does.
because
Yeah, no, he's got it's his authority. I mean,
I want to make sure, because again, this has been going on. I have residents that are very upset. And it's crazy.
no, I just.
We can't just go out and hang some signs up.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I wish we could.
It seems to have
I
been
wish
done.
we
It
could.
seems to have been done in the
I
past.
think that's what's been going on around the town. Nobody knows what the speed limit is. Of course, the courts are going to love this conversation. Whatever the marked speed
Whatever
limit
you
is.
can- You know, I'd like to know as soon as possible, because again,
Good point, though.
I know
It's-
we're all very busy, but
Agreed.
this is,
It's a valid point. It's safety, and the last thing we
Yeah.
want is, after having this conversation, God forbid something happens.
oh,
right.
with the children and the seniors that live in that area,
It's on a grade, it's on a hill.
yeah, I know. So Jim, thank you. If you can
Sure.
find out and get it, let me know as soon as we know what we can do and change it. I'd appreciate it, please. Thank you.
Okay, we have one item for special consideration, new business. We received a letter, which you have a copy of, from Al Capelli, you know, concerning Downing Oil. And would you like to make some comments just to explain what you sent us, Al? Give a copy to everyone.
Yep, I got one.
Thanks, Al.
Yeah, I have one. You have one?
Yeah.
Thank you. I have one.
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Excuse me.
Okay, Al Capelli, architect, representing Downey Oil, who's looking to purchase a 5-acre parcel on Old Route 9, just south of NNS. He's looking to purchase the property to install 2 45,000-gallon above-ground liquid propane storage tanks to facilitate his oil and gas business. Downey Oil has been in Putnam County, Cold Spring area for 75 years. LP is the wave of the future. He has many clients up here in Dutchess County, and he's looking to install 2 of these tanks. The tanks are approximately 11 foot in diameter by 67 feet long. You can go down to the river and see Bottini. You can go down Route 9, Synergy Gas. There are several visual representations that you can see. So in addition to these 2 above-ground LP tanks, there may be a little building. Now, this is in an HB zone. In the HB zone, there is, I don't want to say it's not allowed, there's just no provision in the zoning ordinance to allow this type of use. So we're suggesting perhaps a text amendment allowing this type of use in certain areas with many restrictions on a certain size parcel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in order to allow this type of facility in this location, which is pretty much an industrial area up and down Old Route 9 there.
So this is south of NNS?
Just south of NNS.
NNS have any propane tanks on site of this size, do we know? Anything
think
similar
they
to
do.
that? Smaller ones?
I mean, also in the HB zone, you got Tech Air, you know, so.
Right.
There's some uses that have, you know, hazardous materials, or hazardous, you know, gas and storage in it. I guess Tech Air probably predates zoning, I'm not sure. Never really looked at the use per se.
Didn't they come in for,
They amended their site plan.
built a new building or something?
Site, new building.
Yeah.
And all the precautions were laid out for the parking at that time. If
I
anything,
remember that, yeah,
better
yeah.
because of, you know, everything being new.
And I mean, the New York State Fire Code, you know, and regulates, you know, the storage of liquid LP gas. So, you know, there's requirements regarding bollards and protection and, you know, separation distances and everything else. And the supervisor, Barbara, and I sat down with a consultant from the industry, you know, so there's a number of
And
these.
not just a consultant, but probably the leading consultant and the president of the organization
Sure.
that's responsible.
So, you know, there's a number of these facilities in the area. I know Bettini has two over on Van Wagner Road. You know, they're not uncommon. You know, it's a different animal than fuel oil storage, which we also don't have any provisions for in our code, which is, you know, so, but, you know, it seems to be, I guess, an oversight. I don't think, you know, typically such uses are permitted in an industrial, you know, an industrial area.
So we have industrial zones, right?
We used to have a PI zone, a
Right.
planned industry zone. We don't have that anymore.
What's in the airport
We
area?
have airport industry. It permits a whole variety of things. But we don't have provision for this. I don't know that I would necessarily call it an oversight. Might be an oversight, might not be an oversight. We'd have to go back to the beginning to
Yeah.
find out whether it was excluded specifically.
I mean, it's not permitted in the town at all.
If it's not permitted, if it's not listed, it's prohibited, so.
Oh.
Correct.
So what do we have on Airport Drive? Isn't there any?
AI.
Let's
I
just
don't,
say-
I don't have my code
It's a
with me.
specific zone.
Yeah, that
We have
is, okay.
HB, you know, but out there is AI, isn't it, Barbara? You
Yes,
know?
airport industry.
Yeah.
Airport?
HB, but interestingly, we had a PI zone right across the street. And just recently, a few years ago, changed it to HB only because it had already been developed. So we're
Across the street from where? Here?
across the street from this piece that they're looking at.
Where's the old direct buy from here?
That was a PI zone.
That was the PI, right? That was an IBM building at one
Almost
point.
across the street.
Okay, so let me ask this question. NNS is just north, correct?
Correct.
Because this is Nussbickle property right here.
That's correct.
So-
They're selling, yes.
What is NNS zoned? HB?
HB.
Yes.
What's south of here?
There's an automobile, or I should say a truck.
Used to be the busing company?
Yeah, they
Something.
Chappaqua
fix,
bus.
they
Yeah.
fix large vehicles, buses.
And what is that
uh,
zoned?
trucks.
HB?
HB.
That's zoned HB as well.
I think frankly, the town board wanted to take PI off of Route 9 and relegate more heavy-duty uses to the airport industry
Right.
district.
We did. However, we had the great HB-HD debate. Do we still have HD that
No, we
exists?
got rid of HD.
We got rid of HD, so we have HB.
I'm sorry,
The Degnan site.
very little.
Oh,
That's it.
Degman.
Very
That
little
was
HB.
pre-existing the
We got rid of
discussion.
the HO zone entirely.
Gretel owns on New Hackensack are still HD, there's a few.
Very little.
So-
Very little, just little lots.
What I'm getting at is, I'm not a fan of text amendments. What I'm getting at is, because what happens is, we can start a precedent if we do that, in my opinion. Is it beneficial, if we are going to consider this, is there another type of zone that would be more appropriate, a different type of zone for the Tech Airs of the world, the NNS Supply that has LP gas on site? Is there a different type of zone that would be more suitable in title?
On Route 9?
No, I'm just saying in general.
Well, a use like this, I think, would be well-suited out near the airport in the AI district.
Right, but if we were going to decide to allow this here, is there a more appropriate zone?
Not one that exists now, no.
Right, but one that exists in other municipalities, is there a different title?
I'm not sure that this use is particularly appropriate for this location.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm seeing this for the first time tonight, so
Okay.
I was not part of that meeting. I have not had an opportunity to think about this much, but I'm not sure that this is an appropriate use for this location, as opposed to out by the airport.
Airport.
Or in a GB district somewhere.
But we also have to keep in mind that this area through here, when you look at, the direct buy commercial entity that's almost across the street, you look at the former Chappaqua garage, you look at NNS existing, is it even reasonable to believe that another type of establishment would even want to come into this property based on what's surrounding it? So,
And with the poor slope, the back area.
right, and that's the
facing
other
behind us,
question.
yeah.
So if this is a 5-acre site and you have, an 11 by 300-foot, tank times 2, how much of the site is actually going to be used out of the 5 acres?
Very small portion. 11 by 67 is each one of the tanks. We are not going to have access, obviously, on Route 9, only on Old Route 9. The topography is such that I'm not so sure we're ever going to see the
Right.
tanks for Route 9.
Right.
Of course, we'll be fenced, we'll be heavily landscaped. There's not a lot of traffic. This isn't a retail, this is a wholesale operation.
You'd have access for a tractor trailer.
Tractor trailer comes in the evenings, perhaps 2 or 3 a week, and then Downey Oil comes in the morning with their 5 or 6 trucks, fills up, and then just after lunch, 5 or 6 trucks. That's the only traffic that comes in and out of the site for this particular use, for this function.
Right. I would be careful rezoning this to a different zone from the surrounding property. We have spot zoning to deal with.
Right.
The issue of spot zoning. I could give it more thought, and I'm sort of just
think that's a good
reacting
idea.
at first blush here.
Yeah.
I might want to take a ride up there.
Yeah, I would say, from my perspective, I'm not against this. However, there are experts out there in this town that I'd like to, speak to. Sure. And get their input on this. I have full faith in the operation that it will be safe. I also deal with, in my full-time job, I deal with LEPC Tier 2 requirements, and I'm sure you know how that works with reportable quantities and things like that. So I want to do some research myself, but I'm not against it. And I'm glad that David is here tonight, though, to give us a little bit of his perspective. So I want to digest this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
sure. This
agree
is just
with
for
David.
information, but because David's here and I wanted to get Al here to at least present it, initially to us.
I think it's valuable if David gives us, your input.
Sure.
Based on
Be
your
happy to.
experience.
And
Yeah.
keep in mind that we're looking for a convenient location, right? Not off, I don't want to call Airport Drive off the beaten track. And for this gentleman's business, proximity to Putnam County and to Southern Dutchess and Route 9, the corridor there is very important to him. So you're not going to find too many, openings, so to speak, in Wappingers or even some of the other towns to allow something like this. So that's why this presented itself, and he thought it was
And I've got it on my
appropriate.
mind. I'm not saying it's
Right.
absolutely the
Sure.
wrong thing, but I'd like to look into it before I make an
We look
opinion.
forward to his feedback.
The one thing that, it would have to be a special permitted use.
Yes.
So, and there would be criteria that would play on top of it. So it's not necessarily a text amendment. It's a text amendment in that it would be adding a use, because the use is not permitted in.
Adding a use,
You couldn't even put this use on Airport Drive right now.
Right.
Right.
Because it's not, even if you could,
It's not listed.
It's not listed in our, in our zoning code. So, the use has to be added, and it's going to necessarily be added as a special permitted use, which would have some criteria. And then, depending on what zones you look at, you can then tailor, the special permit criteria so that, it can't be adjacent to residential districts, it can't be,
Right.
So, all of those factors would factor into, the special
Right.
permit conditions.
You're right, not only would there be criteria, but eligibility criteria, but there'll be
Correct.
restrictions as well.
Exactly.
And Tech Air is HB, correct? Are there stipulations on that property, or did that predate the HB?
It's just been there probably
Okay.
beforehand.
Okay. Thank you.
And if the board feels that they want our expert consultant to come down, if you feel that you want to hear from an expert in the industry, we'd be glad to bring them down and speak to you if that's a concern, other than the zoning and the use aspect.
Yeah, they should talk to David, too.
Yeah, I would say after David, gives his opinion and we have time to digest this, if we choose to go that route, that might not be a bad idea. But I think, we have to look at things from 30,000 feet, obviously, and make sure that we're not putting something in the middle of somewhere that is going to really be a concern, so.
Okay.
And for the residents that are there, too, because we do have.
There are
There are
residents.
3 houses, I
Three
think,
houses.
renter,
Right.
people, so yes, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
So we have to
look
take
at all
them
that.
into consideration.
Sure.
So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, then
No, we
move to
talked
go.
about the Easter egg hunt, that's the only thing I would have mentioned.
The what?
We already talked about the Easter egg hunt, that's the only thing I would have mentioned.
Oh, and that person that was giving interviews? to
Yeah,
the
that's,
Disney
yeah,
Channel?
exactly.
The office is
The only other thing I would say is that I'll be here tomorrow at 1 o'clock for, I'm doing a citizen preparedness presentation for the seniors, which is probably going to be an abbreviated one instead of the 90-minute version, but I'm going to have preparedness kits for the senior
That's
citizens.
good.
That's great.
They probably will have a lot of questions, though. I
So
think
any
they will.
staff that, well, I don't want to take them away from their jobs, but anybody else that wants to attend, feel
Sure.
free to join us tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Okay, very good.
I think it's a good thing
Thanks,
for
Bill.
them.
Thanks for doing, yeah, that program that
really
we
is.
started
It's good.
last year has been going very well, and we've gotten actually excellent participation from the outside, and I think virtually every Tuesday, we have it booked.
Good.
So
Good,
they've
good.
enjoyed that, really, that
Glad
effort.
to hear that.
And we have been also starting to tape a number of those programs so that then they
That's
can
good.
see, or other seniors do that, so. Okay, if no other, then we'll move to go into executive session. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
For the purpose of,
For the purpose of, one, there's been a claim filed against the town that Mr. Han will discuss, and then we need to have some discussion on how to proceed on planning and zoning board replacement.
second.
Okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion passed to go in executive session. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think I have to check and see if that...